I'm only getting to do it because of something sad that happened. I think a lot of that has dissipated over the last 3 years.
Vince Gill has been subtly leaving his mark with the Eagles for years, bringing his clear ability to one of the most venerable bands in rock history. At 67, though, he is now at last ready to reveal what has been really happening behind the scenes. Vince shares in a rare, honest moment the secret difficulties, personal struggles, and startling truth that transformed everything. Under wraps all this time, what has he been hiding? And why did he decide to start his silence breaking today? Examining the specifics of what Vince has to say, his disclosures could permanently alter our perspective of the Eagles. Let's start now. Let's start our examination of Vince Gill's extraordinary career by first looking at his background and learning how he joined the venerable Eagles. Starting in a small town, this narrative surprises you in the ways it develops. Born on April 12, 1957, in Norman, Oklahoma, Vince Gill, full name Vincent Grant Gill, started from nothing. The Gill family consisted of 3 children, and he was the youngest of them. His musical path was much shaped by his parents, Jareen and Stan Gill. Stan was a gifted musician playing the banjo and the guitar in addition to a judge. He even spent time teaching Vince how to play these instruments, kindling a lifetime of enthusiasm. Jareen sang and harmonica rolled, equally musically driven. The Gill house was humming music all growing up. Often listening to the Grand Ole Opry on the radio, the family would absorb the country music sounds. They also loved modern rock and roll, exposing Vince to a broad spectrum of musical inspiration. Apart from music, both of his parents loved golf, a game Vince would come to enjoy as well. Vince came upon a guitar belonging to his grandmother early on. He learned to play Old Shep on it while still 5 years old, and then his trip really started. He and his half-brother Bob were already performing together, covering the Beach Boys' Long Tall Texan on a local radio show by the time he was 8. Can you imagine how thrilling that must have been for him? Vince learnt guitar from a nearby guitarist called Jay as he grew older. Julian Akins, who guided his development in skill set. For show and tell, he even brought his guitar to school and delighted his friends with tunes like The House of the Rising Sun. Vince broadened his musical horizons in his teenage years, picking up dobro, fiddle, banjo, mandolin, and bass guitar. Once Vince befriended the son of one of his father's friends, his passion in bluegrass music grew stronger. Vince was inspired to investigate bluegrass after this new friend, a mandolin player, expressed great enthusiasm for that genre. Vince decided boldly to pursue a career in bluegrass performance after graduating from high school. He even started his own bluegrass band known as Mountain Smoke. Strangely enough, Mountain Smoke opened for the hard rock band Kiss once. Still, the performance fell short of expectations. The gathering started to throw objects at them and boo. Defiance drove Vince to flip the bird and even moon the audience before storming off the stage. You might thus be wondering how this young Oklahoma rebel musician turned into the Vince Gill we know today. What is his narrative like? Single career. As we know Vincent Grant Gill today, he is a legendary person in American music. He is hailed as a musician, songwriter, and vocalist. Like many artists, though, his path to recognition started small. Vince started his career performing with several local bluegrass bands in the 1970s. Although he gave his all in this genre, he would not really take front stage until much later. Vince first attracted public interest in 1978 and 1982 when he sang lead vocals for a soft rock band called Pure Prairie League. For him, that was a momentous occasion. Along with singing lead on their hit single, Let Me Love You Tonight, he wrote songs for the band. This encounter helped him refine his trade and establish himself in the music business. Vince briefly veered after his tenure with Pure Prairie League. He picked guitar for the Cherry Bombs, Rodney Crowell's backing band. Though only a stepping stone for what was to come next, this experience was invaluable. Vince chose to go solo in country music in 1984. Though he was ready to jump, it was a big step. Vince recorded with RCA Records Nashville during the next few years. Still, his path was not without difficulties. He had some difficulties at this period and only modest success. Vince, though, was not determined by that. He persisted, always ahead. He signed with MCA Nashville in 1989, launching a new career path that would fundamentally alter everything. Beginning with his album, When I Call Your Name, Vince's commercial breakthrough arrived in the first half of the 1990s. For him, this album marked a turning point and shot him into the forefront. On the Billboard Hot Country Songs list, Vince registered an amazing 65 entries. He celebrated 4 solo #1 hits among these. Between 1992 and 1994, all of these hits were released, confirming his reputation as a country music powerhouse. But that is not all. Vince also had success playing featured artists. On the top hit, The Heart Won't Lie, in 1993, he sang with Reba McEntire. Later on, he worked with Chris Young on Sober Saturday Night and participated in a multi-artist project for Forever Country in 2016. Every album Vince put out in the 1990s had the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA certification of platinum or above. Certified quintuple platinum, I Still Believe in You, is his most successful album. Among solo male country music performers, Vince boasts an amazing 22 Grammy Awards, leading in most wins. Still, Vince's narrative doesn't stop there. From 2010 to 2020, he belonged to a Western swing group known as the Time Jumpers. Then, following the death of Glenn Frey, he joined the venerable rock band Eagles in 2017. Surprising fans and displaying flexibility. Let us travel back to the beginning. The unplanned call that turned everything around. For Vince Gill, it was simply another typical day. He was going about his regular business, juggling chores and considering his future in his field. Vince had had years of solo success, but lately he felt change was about to arrive. He had no idea that a basic phone call was going to cause his world to collapse. His phone rang unexpectedly. At the other end was Eagles manager Irving Azaw. Vince answered, not sure what to expect, his heart pounding. Then word leaked out that stunned him entirely. The Eagles wanted him to join the band. One can only imagine the shock. Here was Vince, a successful musician in his own right, given the opportunity to perform with among the most venerable bands in music history. Vince considered it possibly a hoax. Basically, how could this be real? The Eagles were not only any band. Their remarkable hits had defined a period of music. But reality started to sink in as he heard Irving's sober voice. There was no laughing about this. The band wanted him to pretend to be Glenn Frey, one of their founding members who had lately died. Vince felt a mix of great respect and incredulity. The Eagles' harmonies, classic songs, and influence on the music scene had always delighted him. Thinking about joining them honored me as well as carried great responsibility. But a question tormented him in the middle of his exhilaration. Why me, though? He knew he fit the band musically. His vocal range and guitar technique complemented their approach rather nicely. But replacing Glenn Frey felt intimidating. Vince found himself a whirlpool of ideas as he absorbed this news that would change his life. He had developed his own solo artist identity over decades. He had amassed awards, hit many times, and developed a devoted following. Now, though, joining the Eagles meant at least somewhat deviating from his solo career. Still, it also presented an amazing chance to participate in something more, to become a member of a band whose songs he had grown up loving. Honor and anxiety mixed to be too much. Then arrived the moment Vince asked the burning question inside his head. Why did they decide on me? The response came from unexpected directions. The co-founder of the Eagles, Don Henley, said Vince was the only person they had given any thought for the position. He respected Vince's integrity, musical ability, and regard of the band's legacy. This went beyond just covering a vacancy. It was about honoring Glenn's memory by carrying forward the Eagles' ethos. Still, the biggest surprise was yet to arrive. Vince discovered the call went beyond simply substituting Glenn for him. It was about starting another path. He had to get ready for the forthcoming change. Vince Gill's flight into the Eagles. For Vince Gill, moving from solo artist to member of a venerable band like the Eagles presented no small challenge. Vince had followed his own route in the music business for years. He was used to underlining control, choosing which songs to perform and how to present them. Still, joining the Eagles meant he had to adopt a completely different role, one bursting with duties he had not encountered before and expectations. The chore of assuming Glenn Frey's role presented one of Vince's toughest obstacles. Glenn was not merely any bandmate. He was a founding member of the Eagles and a much-loved person in the music business. Key components of what distinguished the Eagles were his voice and distinct style. Having grown up listening to his music, his death left a great void that seemed nearly impossible to close. Vince knew he could never match Glenn. No one could. Rather, he had to figure out how to honor Glenn's memory while also adding his own voice and flair to the band. Vince sensed the weight of this task right away. Many of his fans were naturally dubious since he was joining a band with a long history. Could Vince live up to the legacy Glenn left behind? They asked. Every rehearsal, every note he played, every performance he gave was under pressure from this ambiguity. He was assuming a job with great expectations. To add to this complexity, Vince had to adjust to once more being in a group. Having been a solo artist calling all the shots for years, where he thrived, he now found himself in a band environment where cooperation was vital. The dynamics have shifted. Vince had to pick up skills in sharing the stage, harmonizing with others, and appreciating the Eagles' sound and style. It was a careful mix between honoring the band's long legacy and being true to himself. Though not for the usual reasons, his first performance with the Eagles was unforgettable. Assuming Glenn Frey's position had obvious emotional weight. Vince was entering a legacy full of history and feeling, not merely a musical one. The audience could sense the importance of the moment. Vince had to focus all those emotions into his performance. This encounter signaled the start of Vince's next chapter. How would he negotiate the emotional terrain of this position while yet making it his own? How would one gain the confidence of the band as well as the audience? Vince Gill was entering a band with a rich and complex legacy when he joined the Eagles. On stage, everything looked perfect. The harmonies melted together, and the actors seemed to be natural. But Vince soon found behind the scenes, that reality was somewhat different. The band members' chemistry was distinctive. Everybody had a unique style and personality that added to the sound of the band, but also presented some difficulties. Strong leader Don Henley drove the group towards his vision and direction. Though it sometimes made things erratic, Joe Walsh brought a free-spirited energy that kept things light and lively. Then there was Timothy B. Schmidt, known for his cool head and soothing manner, serving as the mediator in trying circumstances. For Vince, fitting among these well-known figures was not always simple. He first backed off to see how the band operated. He observed how they negotiated their variances, some minor and others rather major. Sometimes, especially with regard to the creative process, debates got hot. The Eagles were renowned for their painstaking accuracy of detail. Every note and lyric underwent close inspection. Vince knew that the band was so outstanding because of this degree of scrutiny, but it also created a demanding environment. Off stage, the scene was different. There were times when the band members would tell tales from their past and when true friendship and laughter abound. Vince loved these days since they let him relate better to his new colleagues. Tension did exist, though, as well. Often lurking just below the surface are unsaid words and unresolved conflicts. Vince knew the band had gone through a lot together and that some emotional scars persisted. This was especially clear when they would talk of past events, both positive and negative. Vince discovered, among other startling facts, the degree of reliance the band members had on one another. Together, they had experienced breakups, personal losses, and different professional challenges notwithstanding their differences. Still, they always managed to come back together no matter what. Vince understood that their greatest strength and weakness were this link as well. It carried the weight of their shared past, yet also kept them forward. Vince came to see as he settled in that the band's outward harmony hid a more startling reality that would shock listeners. Underlying the music, what secret reality could be? Come along to discover with us. Vince Gill's path with the Eagles had a turning point when everything nearly collapsed. The band had been giving their all in practices, traveling non-stop and negotiating the demands of preserving such a reputation. Everybody felt the weight of expectations, and already there was great conflict. But one fateful day during a practice, Vince would be tested like never before as things got close to breaking. It all began with a song arrangement argument. Vince envisioned one of their venerable hits. In an attempt to revitalize it while honoring the original feel, he proposed a different approach. Not everyone, meanwhile, agreed with his concept. Arguments turned into raised voices and explosive tempers very fast. What started out as a straightforward creative dispute descended into a furious argument. Feeling both misinterpreted and frustrated, Vince discovered he was at the center of this tempest. The emotional weight of the circumstances collapsed upon him, making breathing difficult. He had always wanted to give the band something significant, but right now he felt as though he was being tugged in several directions. Seeing the irritation on his bandmates' faces demoralized me, and the room's thick tension felt suffocating. Vince could sense doubt rising in his chest. He questioned at that point if his road with the Eagles would be ending. Later that day, Vince sat by himself in his hotel room going over all that had preceded this mental point. He considered the financial outlay he had made to join this illustrious group. He had made great effort to find the ideal mix between respecting their legacy and adding his own special sound. But he felt imprisoned now. His love of the music seemed to be tugging him in one direction while the conflicts appeared to be building all around him. He gave great thought to leaving the band. Walking away would mean returning to his solo career, in which he had total control over his music and decisions. But it also meant forfeiting an opportunity to be involved in something far more than himself. Vince was conflicted, wondering whether it would be worth keeping on if it meant going through continual doubt and strife. Something unanticipated occurred just as he felt he was about to break. Sensing the weight of the circumstances, Don Henley walked up to Vince for a private chat. They left the rehearsal room, away from the mounting hostilities. In that more subdued environment, Don respected Vince's attempts to combine his style with the band's legacy, while also noting the challenges he was experiencing. The two shared their frustrations and emotions in a way that felt real and freeing. Underneath the conflict, they discovered in this open dialogue a shared desire to produce something meaningful, a common passion for the music that had first brought them together. Don reassured Vince that the band was changing as artists, and that his contributions were appreciated rather than only helping to preserve a legacy. Knowing he wasn't alone in his battle, Vince felt the pressure start to release and redoubled his efforts. For Vince and the Eagles, this epiphany set off a new chapter marked by more unity and a closer respect of each other's creative visions. Next, not only preserved Vince's spot in the band, but also confirmed his legacy within the Eagles. Their chat signaled a turning point. Vince Gill brought more than just his outstanding guitar and voice when he joined the Eagles. He presented a fresh viewpoint that gave a venerable band new vitality. Vince's distinctive style started to transform the band's sound in fascinating ways. He is well known for his smooth vocals and superb guitar work, especially during live events and in fresh arrangements of beloved songs they had known for years. Fans soon observed his influence. Vince changed the harmonies, among other things, most obviously. The Eagles were renowned for their rich, layered vocals that moved the heartstrings. But Vince's unique tenor voice revealed fresh depth in their harmonies. Consider tunes like Tequila Sunrise and Take It to the Limit. Listeners could hear a fresh sound that kept the core of the originals, while adding Vince's distinctive touch, as Vince's voice blended effortlessly into these well-known tunes. His background in country music added a subtle twang that gave these masterpieces another but still real feel. Fans couldn't get enough. Vince seemed to be giving old friends fresh life. The band's performances now particularly highlighted Vince's guitar work. Deeply anchored in both country and rock, his playing approach helped him to revitalize songs like Hotel California and Lion Eyes. Vince frequently gave the solos his own flair during live performances, giving them more fluid and melodic quality, while yet honoring the original versions loved. His presence on stage gave these performances fresh vitality and a special mix of nostalgia and modernism that made every show unforgettable. Still, Vince's influence went much beyond single solos or songs. He urged the band to investigate a more varied sound and suggested minor rearranging tweaks that would give their old favorites fresh angles. For Peaceful Easy Feeling, for example, his performance revealed a softer, more reflective tone. This metamorphosis made a song everyone knew something familiar yet also novel. His delicate yet forceful guitar and vocals let the band investigate previously unconsidered interpretations of their classic hits. It was truly a revelation. Vince was not only fitting in, he was raising the band to fresh standards. Vince's contributions, though, extended beyond the music. He altered the band in ways none else noticed. Fans responded differently when word leaked out that Vince Gill would be joining the Eagles. Some found it to be a fascinating change. A fresh chapter for a band they loved, including a musician with repeated industry performance credentials. For others, it seemed almost sacrilegious to have anyone filling in for Glenn Frey. The spectrum of responses was wide, swinging from fervent support to total cynicism. Many supporters greeted Vince warmly. They valued his talent and his long run in country music. They saw his joining the band as a new chance to honor the past and look forward to the future while preserving the music of the Eagles. Eager to see how Vince would fit in, his first band gigs did not disappoint. His voice, guitar playing, and general stage presence felt like a natural addition, deftly bringing something fresh but known to the performances. His performances enthralled fans, who cheered and sang along as though he had always been an Eagles member. Not everyone, though, was that friendly. Many of the Eagles supporters felt that without Glenn Frey, the team could never be really the same. Bringing in someone new, even someone as gifted as Vince, would alter the core of the band, they worried. Debates erupted on social media as some supporters expressed their dismay and others supported Vince's inclusion. The exchanges ranged from passionate disputes to sincere defenses of Vince and Glenn. Vince really related to these issues. He understood that Glenn was unique and that the emotional link fans had to him ran strong. Vince answered the criticism that came his way with amazing grace and humility. He had no intention of trying to either replace Glenn or copy him. Rather, he concentrated on honoring the band's past and being real to himself. He frequently expressed in interviews his respect for Glenn and his sense of honor in being an Eagle member. Vince made it plain that he was there to honor the music and assist in continuing the legacy Glenn and the rest of the band had created over many years. Many of the doubters started to be persuaded by his honest approach over time. Vince's genuineness combined with his indisputable ability began to rewrite the story. It dawned on supporters he was not aiming to replace Glenn. He was present to honor what the band had produced together. His performances said volumes, and over time, even the toughest critics started to soften. Rather than seeing Vince just as the new man covering a legacy, they began to value him for the original artist he was. Notwithstanding the criticism, Vince had a secret weapon that finally convinced even the toughest doubters. Known for his simplicity and humility, Vince dropped a bombshell few people would have expected during one honest interview. He said he was actually not sure about staying with the Eagles at the beginning of his path with them. More than anyone could have ever imagined, this insight revealed it went beyond simply the weight of assuming Glenn Frey's role or handling fan mistrust. It was something far more fundamental. Vince said he felt like an outsider a lot in those early days. He battled inadequacy and wondered if he could really help a band with such a rich legacy. Legacy can be heavy, and Vince felt it pressing down on him. Still, he refused to let that depress him. Rather, he fed on it to flourish. Vince started to settle as he negotiated this trying period. He came to respect the past while embracing his own creative ability. This balancing act helped him to become not only an Eagle, but also a crucial component of their ongoing development. Vince jumped right into his part with this clarity. He started to see that although he could never replace Glenn, he could most definitely honor him by living the best version of himself. For Vince, this insight brought about calm. He was there to cooperate and produce songs that would appeal to both new and old listeners, not to compete. Vince Gill recently came clean about his early Eagles days, and his disclosures were quite illuminating. He felt like an outsider even though the band welcomed him with wide arms. Imagine entering a room full of musicians who have laughed through years of hardship and treasured memories. It makes sense that Vince struggled to fit among them. He hadn't expected this sense of solitude. Thus, he started to doubt whether he was indeed the best fit for the Eagles. Would it be better to distance himself, or should he stick with the band? Fans who had always seen him as a confident and vital addition to the team would find this inner struggle startling. The reason Vince finally decided to stick it out shocked everyone even more. He once came to a very low point in his trip. He started to seriously consider leaving the band. It would have been simple to throw in the towel. But in that unsure moment, he promised himself and the memory of Glenn Frey. Vince understood that leaving would mean forfeiting an opportunity to honor Glenn in the best manner he knew how, by ensuring the music endured. He realized he was honoring Glenn and the legacy they had created together via their music by staying in the Eagles. Vince at the time did not fully understand that this inner conflict would eventually profoundly affect his part in the band. His choice to remain gave the group fresh direction even if he had questions and fears. Vince's commitment and how he embraced the difficulties the Eagles encountered together caught the other members of the club. Their own challenges were faced squarely by them, inspired by his commitment. Collectively, they started to overcome their challenges and rediscover their shared love of the music that had first drawn them together. Vince Gill's path with the Eagles has been rife with unanticipated events and open confessions. His experiences not only defined his own road, but also gave the band's remarkable journey fresh vitality. What then is ahead for the Eagles as they keep on this musical journey together? Though only time will tell, their bond has obviously become closer. We appreciate you viewing, fam. Should you like this video, kindly like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the following video that shows up on your screen while still here.